Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Zach and amongst other things I'm a reenactor and a jouster, and today I want to talk to you about the sallet. The sallet is a very important 15th century helmet. It is very popular in the second half of the 15th century. It comes in lots of different forms. This is just one example, and I have done a video about this one already, talking about different types of sallets and how they have different pros and cons. In particular today, however, I wanted to talk to you about the sallet in jousting. Now, the sallet is first introduced in the early mid 15th century as a battlefield style helmet, and you may notice from me wearing it that it leaves a certain part of the head completely exposed, namely the throat and chin. So the sallet is almost always, but not always, worn with an additional piece of armour called the bevor. Here we are. Now, as you can see, with the addition of the bevor, the entire face is covered in plate, but it does leave a gap in between the top of the bevor and the bottom of the visor, in which it is possible to get a sword, or if we're talking about jousting, a lance. So some people therefore assume that sallets would not be used in jousting because it would be too dangerous, and you're asking for trouble. You're asking for a lance basically in the face. Now, this seems to be extremely logical, but it's not what we see in the 15th century. And in fact, in the early 16th century as well, we do see sallet being worn in jousts. Now, in order to understand why we get this wrong, and why the 15th century man is willing to wear a sallet in a joust, I think we need to have a bit of a history lesson on modern jousting. You see, modern jousting started a while ago, and it started in field harness. So a lot of people were using sallets, but in order to make it safer, jousts in the modern period were done with balsa tips. So the end of the lance is made out of a lighter wood that is more likely to break. Also, that end piece of the wood is often weakened with additional cuts or spiral cuts down it, again in order to weaken the wood, make it more likely to break, and therefore deliver a lighter impact to the individual. Another thing about modern jousting is that very often it runs on a point system, where strikes to the shield give you 3 points, to the torso it gives you 2 points, and to the arm it gives you 1 point. Now, this means that over time people tended to wear smaller and smaller shields in modern jousting in order to get the most amount of points, or maybe not to get points themselves, but to stop their opponents from getting quite so many points, giving them a smaller target and making it harder to hit. However, in the 15th century, they use mostly pine, but sometimes other woods, all the way down the lance, and they don't weaken it beforehand. So the impacts are generally bigger than what you get in balsa jousting. Not always, there are other cases, and everything that I say on this channel, there's probably going to be an outlier to it. But anyway, for the most part, solid lances, whether they're pine or ash or something else, will give a harder impact than the balsa tips that we use in that we have been using in modern jousting. So the medieval shields that they use in jousting tend to be a lot bigger than the modern ones. So I've shown you this one before, and I've shown you this one. These are some of my modern shields, and they're actually, for the most part, smaller than historical examples. Even this one, which is really quite big by modern standards, is quite small compared to the average historical shield. And let's just have a look. If I have my my visor down, I can have the shield up and covering the lower half of my face. So this is overlapping upwards now. So the lance strike will strike the shield, and if it glances off upwards, it will go onto the brow of my helmet and then above. We see this a lot, the shield being used to overlap the bevor and the lower part of the sallet, giving greater protection. So the fact that they used bigger shields was important, and that meant that actually sallets could be quite a safe helmet to joust in if you're using historical solids. Another thing that they have that is different is that the lances break differently. So like I said, very often modern balsa tips, in fact also with modern pine tips, because some people are using pine instead of balsa in the end, but weakening it. When it's weakened, it breaks into multiple smaller pieces. And these multiple smaller pieces can more easily find their way through the vision slit, or if you're wearing a sallet and bevor, can find their way in the gap in between the visor and the bevor. Historically, using one solid piece lance, that doesn't tend to happen. And the reason for that is that historical lances, being unweakened, tend to break in just 3 pieces. Now, I don't know if you've ever broken a piece of spaghetti and actually watched it how it breaks, but basically you take the spaghetti, you bend it from either end, and then it breaks into 3 or 4 pieces. The 2 stress points in the middle where it snaps then causes a 3rd piece, doesn't break into 2, it causes a 3rd piece to spiral off into the air. If you've got some spaghetti at home, you can try it and see. Sometimes it's 3 pieces, sometimes it's 4. What you see, and what those who have been doing solid lance jousting more recently have seen, is that most lances, when broken, if they are solid and unweakened, will break into 3 pieces. And these pieces are a lot bigger than the ones that we tend to see in balsa jousting, and so therefore they're much less likely to fit in between the visor and bevor gap in a sallet and bevor. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not coming out here. Be very careful what you're hearing, because what I'm not saying is that the sallet and bevor is the safest helmet and you're absolutely fine, go out and joust in a sallet and bevor. That is not what I'm saying. Certainly in the period and right now, there are safer helmets that can be used for tournament and for jousting. The sallet is not the be all and end all, but it is not as weak, it is not as dangerous as we might assume, because historically jousters are doing something that is a little bit different to what most jousts nowadays are doing. And those small differences actually mean that the sallet and bevor was used in jousts for over 50 years across the course of the century. So I hope that was interesting. I hope you learned something there. If you like this sort of thing, please do subscribe, give me a like, and if you've got any questions or things that you want me to cover, please do leave a comment down below. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in my next video.